the city of Espoo. And today we will be talking about the SPARCS learnings from the projects from the past 4.5 years, as we are coming close to the end of the project, and talk about the e-mobility issues developed in Espoo. Some practical issues in the beginning. Please mute your microphone and keep camera closed during the presentations. Please use the chat for any comments or questions that you might have for our presenters. And there is also dedicated joint Q&A session in the end of the webinar where we can have more questions and comments, and also use mics and cameras in that session. Please note that this webinar will be recorded, so the recording of the event will be shared in the SPARCS medium. Today we have multiple presentations, so I will firstly quickly set up the scene from mobility perspective in Espoo. And after that, Mari Hukkalainen from VTT will be talking about climate neutral cities and how to go towards those ambitious goals. Then we have Sanna Häsä from Siemens talking about e-mobility integration to demand response. Then we have Jussi Innala from Plug It Finland talking about the SPARCS demo sites, Sello and Lippulaiva, and the public charging solutions in those. And then we have Mikaela Ranta from VTT talking about e-mobility hub charging demand simulation work done in the SPARCS project. And then, as said before, we have a brief Q&A session in the end, but we can also probably take 1 or 2 questions after each presentation. Let's see how the timing goes. But to jump right into the question of mobilities, I thought to say a few words about sustainable mobilities in general, and especially the Espoo case and the SPARCS project case that we are talking about today. If we talk about sustainable mobilities, of course, the climate neutrality and zero carbon emissions are some of the key targets that are currently discussed and something that we are aiming towards. And electric mobility, as we will discuss today, is a big part of that equation. I highlighted here a few other kind of emerging topics or themes, trends that are happening at the moment in terms of mobilities. For example, micromobility, emergence of especially electric micromobility and shared mobility services, shared mobility modes, the highlight of active mobility modes, walking, bicycle use, those kind of livable urban public spaces that facilitate, for example, walking are increasingly discussed in both in the academia and in the practice of cities and development projects. Of course, the 15-minute cities and the post-COVID-19 world and mobilities are also changing the landscape of how we move and how we build our cities, and what kind of emphasis we give to different kind of mobility modes and different new powertrains or energy sources. And of course, this also highlights the question of mobility poverty and accessibility, and that's also something that needs to be carefully considered when we are going through this kind of a urban transformation that we have also in the SPARCS project aim to do. A few words for those who are not familiar with Espoo. Espoo is the second largest city in Finland. It's also growing the fastest at the moment. It's attracting more and more people into the Espoo area. It's located in the Helsinki capital metropolitan area, and there's also a lot of emphasis on education in the area. There's a lot of students, for example, living and studying in Espoo, so that affects the population demographics of the area. Espoo is also a quite large area, which is connected by rail connections. Some of them are quite recent additions, and also Espoo is characterized by this 5 city center kind of a city structure instead of one city, old city center. If we talk about the sustainable mobility work in Espoo, there's charging infrastructure development ongoing with different companies and organizations on developing the emerging e-mobility infrastructure and framework of the area. Currently, around half of the journeys in Espoo are made through sustainable mobility modes, meaning walking, cycling, public transportation. So it's on a rather nice level, but there's still, of course, more work to be done to increase those numbers. As Espoo is growing, there's been quite big investments recently, especially to rail-based public transportation, the metro, light rail, and city rail or commuter train systems. Here is just quickly to show the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions in Espoo. On the left, there's the current situation. So transportation mobility accounts for around 1/3 of the emissions in 2022. And based on different kind of scenarios, it's estimated that by 2030, when Espoo has the climate neutral target as well, transportation already is responsible over half of the emissions in the area. And that's due to the decrease in the energy sector. So with upcoming years, the role and meaningfulness of the transport-related emissions is only increasing. So there's very, very much push to decrease those emissions. Here's the map of Espoo. You can see the rail connections with the different colors highlighted and the 5 different city centers that we have in Espoo with the light brown beige color. So there's rails connecting the different city centers and of course also traditional road systems. In SPARCS project that we are presenting today, we are working in Espoo on positive energy districts or PEDs, which are basically districts that would produce more energy than they consume and renewable energy. And of course, e-mobility and mobility in general plays a part in that equation. In the project, we are focusing on sustainable mobility, especially e-mobility and charging solutions, and also studying travel behavior and how we can nudge that to more sustainable directions. From city perspective, the project is very much related to the city strategy of being carbon neutral by 2030 and also reaching the SDGs, the UN Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals by 2025. And in the project, we have over 30 partners across Europe, and together with Leipzig, Espoo is acting as the Lighthouse City in the project where these demonstrations are applied and learnings are disseminated. We are in the end of the project, so in September this year we will be concluding the project, and now we are presenting some of the results from Espoo. Here is just quickly the SPARCS demo sites in the Espoo context. So especially today, we will be talking about demonstrations that have happened in the Leppävaara and in the Espoonlahti case areas. We also have Kera as this kind of urban planning demonstration where we try to bring these learnings from Leppävaara and Espoonlahti already in the initial planning and building phases of the new urban district of Kera. We also have Finno as this kind of replication area that we have noted that there could be possibilities to apply these new learnings as well as the Finno area is also growing and developing quite rapidly. now and in the upcoming few decades. And just to conclude, here is kind of a concept picture of the energy positive district from the SPARCS project. And of course, the project deals with a lot more issues than just electric mobility or electromobility, but as highlighted before, it plays a key picture in the district level as such. But that's a quick introduction to the topic. And now we can start our deep dive into the project and the learnings, and starting from the climate neutral cities framework from Mari Hukkalainen. So Mari, I will stop sharing my screen and please take over and
Yes.
your presentation.
Thank you so much, Jani, for presenting the project. And now you should see my screen well. Please tell me if it's not looking good. So I'm really happy to be here with you all. I'm going to talk to you about the climate neutral cities development in kind of like in a bit bigger perspective. I'm Mari Hukkalainen. I'm a senior scientist at VTT, and for the past almost 5 years now, one of my biggest project has been this SPARCS project. I'm coordinating it, and in addition, I'm working in the EU Cities Mission and Net Zero Cities program. And that's what I also want to tell you about. So firstly, a few words about the mission towards climate neutral cities. And then, of course, the focus still today is the SPARCS and the demonstrations we have been doing there. Also that how that all kind of like links together, and then some words about the systemic approach as well. But I will, in any case, start from the EU mission. So EU has 5 big missions. One of them is this climate neutral and smart cities, and net zero cities is sort of like trying to help cities to implement this. So we really are on a mission. This is a really huge like kind of like goal. It has been, I heard somebody saying that this is a bit like sending a rocket to the moon, except doing that like 100 times or so. So it takes a great deal of work and changes on many different levels in order for us to reach towards, or like trying to change our cities, our systems towards net zero emissions pathway. So we should be accelerating the change, and we should do that fast. 2030 is really close already, and we really need to make a radical change. And that's what we are then from our part trying to kind of like push toward by doing, or like, so in that sense, I think that projects like SPARCS, they are really central on helping to find new ways for and collaborating. So in this EU mission, there are 100 or actually 112 cities around Europe, and all these cities, they are aiming towards developing their cities to be climate neutral and smart by 2030, and then to continue from that onwards, that all European cities would follow this by 2050. So that is really an ambitious goal. And well, here are a few services that the project is kind of like doing together with the cities, how we can help cities with this major target and goal. But then I also want to take the opportunity and say a few words about the systems change and the journey towards climate neutrality. So kind of like the traditional way it's often we are trying to do things kind of like from the top down single actor perspective, and then that kind of like easily ends up having isolated analysis, isolated actions or fragmented actions, standalone solutions, and that's not really doing the job too well. So one of the things that we are trying to do in Europe through this cities mission is that we are trying to change a bit this narrative of how we work together towards working with like portfolios of actions with deep collaboration between different actors, stakeholders, in order to have a systemic approach to change. And that really means like that we need to have this bubble picture that kind of like tries to also visualize it, how we really need many different kind of actors to be part of this process and to work together on it. And it like what I hope also that we can soon see some examples in the like when we are going back to the SPARCS project. So when we are developing cities towards climate neutrality, we will need these portfolios of actions so that we can really address systemic barriers and the several layers that are needed in the change. And this really many, like in the outer layer, there are the kind of like it tries to visualize that what are all the different elements that has to be taken into account. And I think it was very visible from the picture that Jani was showing earlier about Espoo's emissions. So there it really highlights the role of the mobility and developing mobility. So it was one kind of like big puzzle piece in this transition. And for us, so when we are trying to deal with these kind of really large-scale systemic changes, we have to understand the interdependencies, links, and also barriers between these different roles, of course, that how roles, different thematic areas, solutions, and it's not only about technological stuff, but also about how to really get these new solutions into action. So when we go or when we think about the cities level, what I think that the project that through research and innovation projects, we really can push forward the change. Like the projects are those points where partners have really the chance to take time and develop new things and not kind of like focus only on their kind of like practical everyday job they are doing. And I want to still remind also this fact that the level of cities, it's really important, is cities consume 75% of the world's energy, and they emit almost 60% of global greenhouse gases. So in my thinking, this also means that the change needs to happen at the local level, on the ground, on many actions, and especially when it comes to the development of mobility systems. Here are some key elements that how we at VTT, so Technical Research Centre of Finland, how we have been approaching climate neutral cities. And today we really focus on this low carbon and smart mobility, which is one of the kind of like loads. But then that we do in like that we study together with that how it is linked to the positive energy districts, as Jani was earlier explaining. So positive energy districts mean districts or solutions where we are reducing the energy demand, improving energy efficiency as much as possible, while also trying to increase local renewable energy production, and then in order to do that in an optimal way, we need energy flexibility, so energy management, and how to connect this to the energy grid. And this is the part where electrifying mobility comes to the big picture, because when we are starting to increasingly use electrical vehicles, then it starts to have bigger and bigger effect on the local grid, and that has been one of our research points. So I'm really happy to show here some of the work and results we have been doing with the SPARCS partners for the past 5 years soon, and then I'm happy to give floor to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mari, for the presentation. And then we can go forward with the program. And Sanna, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jenny, and thank you for all to invite me here. So I start to share my screen. Yeah. So first of all, hello everyone. My name is Sanna Hesa, and I'm working as a project manager for Siemens Osakeyhtiö, mainly being driving for innovative technologies projects. So it means all kind of new technologies and pilot projects and such. Also these more traditional technology projects, and I've been dealing with e-mobility for the past 4 years now here in almost 5 years now here in Siemens Osakeyhtiö, and being part of the SPARCS project for this one demonstration area I'm going to talk to you about. So mainly about, Mari already mentioned the importance of the e-mobility and to the demand response when talking about the electrification. So a couple of words from my side also to this topic. Yeah, first of all, for the e-mobility in general, some trends. So high power charging is increasing more and more all the time. The power is increasing, the more power is charged, and the number of charging points are increasing all the time. And in Finland, for the last year, some statistics, the new EVs, and now we talk about the passenger vehicles, the increase was 87%, thinking about from the previous year. And of all the new vehicles that have been registered in Finland, also including all the combustion engine vehicles, so the full electric vehicles have been 40% of the total amount of the new cars. So the electrification is really happening, and the speed is just kind of increasing all the time. So that's also causing then some positive effects for all this carbon neutrality topic, but also then there might be some challenges regarding the topic, but a lot of opportunities regarding this e-mobility in general. Electrification of heavy-duty vehicles, that's already started here in Finland as well. In some other countries have been a little bit more, like in Sweden or in Norway, but here in Finland as well. So it means that the e-trucks, first of all, the vans and logistic vehicles, and also the heavy-duty trucks are going to be electrified. And that means more power. They have larger batteries, and it means that they need a lot of power, and they will need it a little bit more urgently than the normal passenger cars. And then when we think about the charging, there is an EU AFIR directive in force, which is also putting some requirements for the charging of these heavy-duty vehicles. So that's also something that needs to take into consideration. Like Mari also mentioned that in general, the regulation and new business models are created with all the new technologies and with systemic change. So this is also one part of that. Then megawatt charging is coming. It means that even larger powers are needed for the charging, for the heavy-duty vehicles mainly, of course, but then also the power that is needed is going to be increased. So yeah, that's something that needs to be taken into consideration in general. Charging modes. So when thinking about that, we need more power, but if the grid capacity is still what it is, and we want to use the current grid connections, we need to do something because the grid capacity may not always be sufficient for this higher power needs. So the load management and peak shaving are something that can be used. And then also the microgrids can be formed. I will talk about more about these things later on. And then the next step to this integration of the charging infrastructure and EVs to the energy system is vehicle to load and vehicle to grid integration, which means that from the battery, from the car, the energy is actually supplied towards the grid and not vice versa as usually. But that's then the next step about the story. So yes, the scaling of the charging infrastructure, when we have more cars on the roads, full EVs, and then also these e-buses and heavy-duty vehicles, we will need more power. We need scalable charging technology, more charging points, and more power. That's in short. And then when we talk about the charging, so it's of course this charger where you connect your car. That's the first point for this driver basically. But then on the other side of that, there's always the grid connection. So the charger is connected to the power grid. And when we talk about the large charging powers, it's connected to the medium voltage grid. So it's medium voltage grid, and then you have certain appliances, switch gears, transformers, and such in a secondary substation, and that's then connected to the charging device, and then you can charge your car. So this is basically the whole hardware chain of the charging. So the charging infrastructure, in short. Then when we think about the challenges of today, and we think about the energy transition, so then one key point to be taken into consideration is also the digital transformation. So basically, the things I showed you in the previous slide, it was the hardware of the system. You have the charger, and then you have the grid connection, and then you can plug your car in, and you can charge it. Yeah, that's kind of the basic thing. Like you would charge your PC from the socket on the wall. That's the basic thing. But then when we talk about the EV charging, there's a lot of different softwares applied to it. And then if we go one step further to think about the connection of these chargers into a larger scope, so then you need to have some more digitalization there. And when it's said that everything that can be electrified will be electrified, and everything that can be digitalized will be digitalized. So this is one important thing. So the real world and the digital worlds are merging. And what does it mean? It means that we are talking about system level change. So it's not just the charger anymore, but there's a connection and interaction with other systems as well. So it's not just the charger and the grid connection, but it's connected by digital forms to a larger level systems. And then when we talk about this electric vehicle charging, it's like a one cell of this whole palette of different kind of energy related topics. And in Siemens, we have launched the term grid edge, which is the new dimension between the grid, intelligent grid, smart building, EV charging, for example, some prosumers, so small scale renewable production, for example. And that whole space is creating these new business opportunities, new business models, which also Mari was mentioning, and greater sustainability. And of course, it will require then more regulation, for example, as well, like these systemic changes usually do. And we can think about also that this is part of this sector integration as well. In a way, different parts of the energy system will be connected together. So examples of these is exactly this e-car charging. There's this solar energy systems, energy storages, and virtual power plants, for example. And then when we go a little bit more practical approach to this systemic change, we can think about the energy system or the electrical system as a chain from the electricity production to the consumption. And there's, of course, different kind of consumption. Now we talk about the EV charging in general. And always when we produce the electricity and we have the electricity consumption, then the grid needs to be in balance, basically. So always need to produce so much energy that is used. If you have overproduction, the grid is not stable anymore. If you consume more than you produce, the grid is not stable anymore. And it's the grid frequency as used as an indicator of a grid balance. And if we would think about that we increase the consumption remarkably, then we need to either increase the production or do something else. So it means basically reduce the consumption. And how that's done, then we have this digital layer, these digital services, which is called virtual power plant. So we still have this energy production and it's transferred, the power production is transferred to the EV charging point as earlier, but so there's this power transfer happening from the grid to the charging point. But when we have the largest charging infrastructure, high power charging and megawatt charging, we have quite high powers of the charging there. And then what we might need to do, if there is not enough production to cover the whole need, we might need to cut the power consumption by load management and demand response. And that's done with a digital layer called virtual power plant. And then when we think about, again, so this is on a larger scale. Then when we think about it in a other angle, we can think about that it could be thought as a microgrid. So we have the grid connection, then we have a building which is having some consumption, and we have charging points in front of the office building, for example, or some other building. We might have some photovoltaic production there, so then it's already called a microgrid. And then to be able to balance the consumption of the building and the charging points to be equal to the grid connection that has been bought so that we don't exceed the limits of our grid connection, there is some measures to be done, like load management or peak shaving. Then and this is called a microgrid already if you have this PV production and then you have some own consumption in building and the charging points. Then if we would like to go one step further, we could think that there can be also energy storage included there, but in this case we don't have that. But that can be considered as a little bit larger microgrid. But now we are not concentrating on that part, so I take it away. So in Ilmatar Arena, what we have been doing is that we have connected the charging points, which are shown in the picture, to the building management system. So first of all, Ilmatar Arena is a ice hall, brand new in Espoo, in Matinkylä. So there is a lot of cooling equipment, and now they have installed their own PV plant there, and there's a lot of consumption, energy and electricity consumption inside the building. Then they wanted to install the charging points there for the customers, and now these charging points are connected to the building management system in order to balance the power consumption of the building and the charging points so that they don't exceed the grid connection level, first of all. So basically what's being done there is peak shaving, so that if you have the very high power in general, you can take the peak off there, so you don't consume so much power by the load management, so that you can then reduce the power if needed. So this is the more schematic picture of the implementation. So basically we have with this one high power charging device, it's Siemens 160 kilowatt C-Charge D, DC charger, so you can get 160 kilowatts power out of that charging point. Then there is AC charging points. They are 11/22 kilowatt charging points, and they have been provided by Plugit, basically. But this whole charging fleet, so to speak, is connected then to the management system of the building. And then in case needed, there's a certain amount of power that can be used by the building for both of the main switchboards there. And if it looks like that this power is going to be going above the limit, then the power of these chargers will be limited. So that, for example, if someone is charging their car with this 160 kilowatt charging point, and they would charge really 160 kilowatt, and then in case needed, we can limit the power so that they will get only 150 kilowatt or 130 kilowatt. Of course, we don't cut the all power off, because then it would be very bad service to the person who is charging there. But we will cut the power off based on the need on these charging points. So that they still get the power, but it's okay for the limits of the grid, also taking into consideration of this PV power production as well, and the total consumption. So that's the whole idea of the implementation here. And of course there's a little bit different modes that it can be calculated and taking into account, and a lot of different parameters that can be then also changed. So that's the core of the topic here. And basically what also can be done is that it can be connected to the national grid energy markets, so that basically this reserve could be sold to the energy markets, so that if the national grid balance is in jeopardy, so the load could be reduced here, so that then the consumption is reduced, and then the balance can be achieved. Obviously, it's not only this location, but with this virtual power plant concept, you will aggregate the different powers from the different locations, and then you can achieve a quite substantial amount of power that can affect really the grid balance as well. And there are different markets for that can be participated, and then you can actually get some money out of it. There's own business models for that existing as well. Then a couple of words for the e-mobility future. So when we talk about the higher charging powers and these new concepts, so in the future there's coming a little bit more even. I mentioned the megawatt charging standard, or the megawatt charging, so that's coming as a standard at some point of time. So there's larger powers, and then you would need more flexibility on the charging as well, so that you can reduce the power if it's needed somewhere else. Then if we talk about the next steps, which I mentioned also earlier, is the bidirectional charging, so vehicle to grid. So then you can take actually the power from the car via the charging device to balance the grid, or balance the consumption of a building or home or some other load. Then one step further is autonomous fast charging. So there will be some charger robots which can then help to these both topics. So if you have megawatt charging, it's a bigger plug, so you can get some help for that. And then when you get the autonomous vehicles, so then they can be charged with these autonomous charging devices. Then one more thing that is coming up is wireless charging, and then your car is always connected to a charger, and then it might be a little bit easier also to control when the car will be charged, even if it's connected to the charger all the time. So it can be easier to control the exact charging time, and then if needed, also reduce then the charging power or use this vehicle to grid functionality of these devices as well. So this is something that we are going towards, not there yet, but these points are also making it even more important that you can really control the charging, and it will be really part of the energy system. It's not just a single thing happening somewhere, but it will be part of this energy system as one part of this puzzle of the whole energy system, really. And that's all for my part. Thank you very much. Here is the nice picture of our charger from Ilmatar Arena, having Plugit logo there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanna, for the interesting presentation. I don't see any questions or comments at the moment, but please remember to add your comments and questions to our speakers to the chat, and we can collect them together in the end and then have a discussion on those. But thanks, Sanna. And next, I would ask Jussi to present his presentation. So, Jussi, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Jussi Innala. I am a project manager here in Plugit, Finland. I've been working with maintenance and with projects in charging area for a few years. I think more or less like 8 years for now. This presentation is causing Cello and Lippulaiva e-mobility solutions. Shortly from the Plugit. We have been building e-mobility since 2012, beginning from AC charging and growing our company from the time, year after year. Here's our vision, our mission, and our journey, where we should be and where we are heading to. I think this is not necessary for me to read this through. Our journey is investing new charging network in the Nordic countries and Baltic area as well. As Sanna also mentioned, whole charging solution is part of the bigger area or bigger electrical distribution network or distribution system. In our thinking and in our company, we have of course charging systems that are connected to the medium voltage grid. We can connect battery systems to the same system, as well as micro production. And this all can be offered as like a charging as a service. So the customer is free of risk, for example, on that case. If we think about the lifetime of charging, charging as a service thinking, the lifetime is plus 10 years. For example, the investment is only a small part of the whole lifetime costs of charging. So we start project from the year -1, for example, or -2 before the operation starts, depending of the size, for example, of the charging system. And there's planning, sourcing, ordering grid connections, making contracts, some commissioning, training to the customers, everything like that before actual start of operation. But after that, there's several years with maintenance, repairs. There's optimization. There is some software development and software changes. Maybe some operators will change. There's a huge amount of changes that can be happened during several years. And with these things, we are serving, or we are giving charging as a service solution. So we will give a 24/7 support to the chargers, and if needed, we can give an SLA agreement. And also there is some optional contract, for example, for more charging points or some higher level of SLA or something like that. What is it in Leppävaara? There have been built a bus charging system. It's 7-year contract where Plugity has full responsibility. So there's a monthly fee, and there's for the customer, and then there's no investment needed. It's over 99% uptime, 24/7 and every day actually. Yeah. Uptime it's not 100%. We have to make some maintenance and maybe sometimes some repairments, and that will lower the uptime a little bit. Energy consumption is 100 megawatt hours per month. There is it's public charging for buses. There is GPT cable charging sockets, and there is also pantograph charging, pantograph chargers as well. There's also CCS charger or CCS charging point for backup charging in the case that pantograph charging is not working. properly. Currently, there's only one bus operator using the charging flat at this time. It's a service provider or plug-in service provider for HSL, which is a local PTA in Helsinki area. There is 3 megawatt medium voltage connection. It can be decreased up to 4 megawatts, but at this point there is no need to make that. All low voltage switchgears are remote controlled from our backend, charging backend, so we can make a reboot for the chargers on hardware side if needed. All the energy is 100% renewable. And there's charging points or sockets. There's 6 pieces of 120 kV chargers, which is GPT chargers, and 100 kV CCS backup charger for those 5 pantograph chargers. We have other charging area on this Espoo area. That is part of the SPARC is Lippulaiva. It is actually a shopping center mainly, and then there's some apartments top of the shopping center. It's also charging as a service mode. There's 124 chargers on AC side and 10 DC charging sockets. It's built on plug-in-tube modular DC charger based solution, and there's one S side tube and one M side tube charger. There's 6 charging points at the big one and 4 on S side, small side of a tube modular charger. It's partly public and partly private charging area. There's public AC and DC chargers for customers in a shopping center, and then there's tenants who live top of the top of the shopping center. Above it, there's AC chargers for those. Citycon will own chargers after the contract time. Actually, they will be moved to Citycon own. Then some words about mobility hub electrification. There's several vehicle types. We have heavy trucks. We have small trucks. We have delivery vans, and all kind of huge variation of charging power needs on that area. There's CCS and MCS standard-based systems. It's based on shared chargers with high occupancy, low costs. Then there's a less space need, and it's easier to optimize. For example, the charging power or maximum grid connection power or something like that. Or then we, if we have a charger, a bigger charging location, we need also some additional services like shops and at least restaurants or place to eat for truck drivers and during the charging session. Cooperation, responsibilities between different stakeholders is seen important, but when we thinking about heavy duty charging with high power, short charging time, reliability, and easy maintenance, they are maybe the keywords for mobility hub. We also have quite good customer experience already by now, and we get more day after day. We have different charging groups or different ways to operate. So we have several different charging needs that we have to face. And what's the future of e-mobility hubs? We have to face the fact that there's a new standards, wireless charging, vehicle to grid, also the megawatt charging. We see that there are mainly the possibilities. We have to have a capability to make energy optimizing in a high level and also low level, block level. Possibilities to control and optimize the battery systems, as well as local energy production, as seen in the first map. Optimizing also as prioritization when what is new or what we have seen to come is movable solutions. The area is changing so fast that we have to have movable solutions for temporary charging points, and also the customer might need higher charging points for after some time. So movable solution could be key for that kind of also temporary use. Then there's some evolving environment things, e-bikes, drones, something like that. That can be think to connect car charging systems. Lifetime of charging systems. What's important is full lifetime cost, not just an investment cost. For sure, the cheapest investments, it's not the best solution, or during the whole lifetime, it's not the cheapest anymore. Could be, but hardly. It's not. What's next steps for plug-ins? I think it's public charging for commercial vehicles. Just adding new Pro DC charging points or chargers in the Nordic area. This is I think the first heavy duty charging station in Finland. It was opened end of last year. And this is what we are aiming to. It's our target is open more than 90 stations for commercial vehicles within the next 5 years. This is shortly for what was in SPARCS and what was Plug-it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jussi, for the interesting presentation, and we can come back to those interesting notes on the future of e-mobility hubs in the final discussion. Thanks, Jussi. I don't see any questions or comments in the chat. Please write down your thoughts there if you have something you would like to ask or note to our presenters. But then we could go to our last presentation. So Mikaela, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will just start by sharing my screen. Yes, so I hope you can now see my screen. Good. So I'm Mikaela Ranta. I'm working for VTT as a research scientist, and I've been working with e-mobility topics for the last about 8 years. And well, just first a definition of the word e-mobility. It can of course mean anything, any way of moving from point A to B using electricity as the main power source. But in this presentation, I will concentrate on passenger cars and heavy-duty vehicles. So omitting light vehicles like bikes and scooters and things like that. Let's see if I can change the slide. So I wanted to start with a big picture about some e-mobility challenges that are often brought up. First of all, the high upfront costs. We have seen that the sales of EVs is rapidly increasing, and also the usage of an EV, it's cheaper than to drive a conventional car. But still the costs, the investment costs are high in the beginning, even though they are decreasing, but still they are higher than for conventional. And that is an issue for many people still. And then we have the range anxiety. It's also often discussed. People are worried about how long their battery will last and how much time it will take for charging and where to charge and things like that. And of course, this is connected to the charging infrastructure that is available, but I think it also reflects the change in behavior that we can see, that an EV, it's different than an ICE. You cannot just refuel it for 5 minutes whenever you like. You need to a little bit think how much time you will actually need for the charging. In an ideal case, you can do it whenever you are parked, and it won't interfere in your daily driving at all. So for instance, at home during the night, the vehicle will be charged. But in case you don't have your own charging infra at home, you need to rely on public charging infra. And then that can be an issue, even though that is also constantly increasing. And we have laws pushing for more charging infrastructure. And then there are concerns regarding the battery lifetime, environmental impact of batteries, etc. This is also connected to the charging, because the way you use the battery, it will have implications on the state of health and the resale value for the battery and the vehicle as a whole. And then last but not least, the impact on the electric grid. What will it look like when we have more and more EVs on the roads? Still, most vehicles are conventional ones, gasoline and diesel vehicles. But hopefully we will see a rapid increase and see that continuing. And maybe 10, 20 years from now, we will reach a very high level of electrification. What kind of impact will that have? And this was the main topic we wanted to study in the SPARCS project, because as we already heard from several presentations, SPARCS is about positive energy districts, and we have now an integration of mobility with the entire energy system. And this is very interesting to see what will happen. So to do this, we decided to do some simulations, but this also proved to be very difficult. In theory, we can try to simulate all vehicles and see how they behave, but we would need to somehow know the technical parameters. We would need to know the usage pattern of each vehicle, their driving routes, when they are parked, how long they are parked, and based on that, calculate the actual energy need for each individual vehicle. We would also need to understand user preferences and also future EV adoption rates, availability of charging infrastructure. Probably won't be charging infra at each and every parking spot in the future, but how much charging infra do we really how much will we have some years from now? It's very difficult to predict. So since there are many uncertainties and we don't have actually data on all of this, we need to simplify the approach a little bit. And we decided to analyze possible scenarios based on the data that we do have. So how did we then tackle this lack of data and create some meaningful simulations? We had this simulation workflow that we worked out. We started by statistics, various sources, and based on that we formed activity probabilities for vehicles. I will shortly try to describe this in the following slides to make it a little bit more understandable. Based on this, we then formed daily schedules for a selected amount of vehicles. And then we were able to estimate the actual energy demand for these vehicles. And then we tried to optimize their charging behavior based on some assumption of the charging price. And then in the last stage, we aggregated all this data. So we added all vehicles and their charging on top of each other. And then we could get the overall impact and the power required from the grid for these vehicles. So how do we get statistics of vehicles? Because we cannot really measure that. And there are privacy issues also, even if we would try to follow vehicles. We started with an activity-based transportation model, simply for the reason that we had this from a previous project. And in this map, you can see Espoo, or at least a part of Espoo. We have this model for the whole Helsinki region, but this part is now for the Espoo city. And all dots and circles you can see on the map, they represent buildings of different types. So we have encoded different types of buildings like residential buildings, schools, offices, shopping centers, etc., with different colors. And then there are some bigger circles. These represent the modifications we made for the purpose of SPARCS. So as you already saw, SPARCS is concentrated on 3 demo areas. In Espoo, we have the Leppävaara and the Espoonlahti areas. And then we have Kera, which is a new area under construction. That's the one with the highest amount of big circles in this map. So we included all the buildings that are planned for this area, even though still almost no one lives there and the buildings are under construction. But we wanted to analyze the future. So that's why we included them also. And in this model, we basically use statistics of many types, statistics on household size, income level, ages, and etc., to form the probable mobility behavior of the people living in the city. So for instance, a middle-aged person probably goes to work in the morning. A young person probably goes to some school and things like that. So we use this kind of data to form the traffic flow. And from this we can extract how many people will actually use their own car and how many people will prefer public transportation, biking, walking, and so on. So this depends on what is good for you. If you have a very long trip to your office, probably you won't walk. But if you live very close to the office, then most probably you will have the option of walking, for instance. And then based on this traffic flow, we extracted the usage of passenger cars. And here on the left picture, you can see the car share shown as a status in time. So the blue color represents the share of cars that are parked either at home or at the office. So meaning that for a rather long period staying at the same location. Then the gray is short-term parking, for instance, a shopping center. And then the orange one is that the car is actually driving around. So most of the time, most cars are actually parked, and this is quite expected for passenger cars. Based on this, we can also form probabilities for the change in time. So the probability that a vehicle will, at a certain time instant, start a journey or end a journey, and instead of driving, being parked. And this can be seen in the right picture. And here we can see clearly two peaks. There's a morning rush hour and afternoon rush hour. Means that a lot of journeys either end or start during this time. Then for the heavy-duty vehicles, we did not have this kind of activity-based model. So we used a somewhat different approach. For buses, we were able to form these probabilities simply based on the bus schedules. So the bus schedules, they are openly available. And here the orange is driving and the gray means that the bus is parked at an end bus stop. So it will very soon continue on the next journey. And then the blue means that the bus is, or it's the share of buses that are parked at the depot. And we can see that the utilization of buses is very much higher. Almost all buses are in use during the morning and afternoon rush hours, and only in the night time, around 3-4 a.m. Almost all buses are parked at the depot. Then for the delivery trucks, we also wanted to include them, even though we have even less data for them. So we relied mostly on traffic counts that are available from a couple of locations in Espoo. So this data, it has the highest uncertainty. And we had to use some basic assumptions on how we think that the trucks will be used. But we have still this rough estimate on the delivery truck usage. So based on these this kind of probabilities, we then formed individual vehicles, virtual representations of individual vehicles, and formed their driving schedule for one day. Then, having that, we could continue to the charging and how to optimize the charging. And here we also made some basic assumptions. we assumed all vehicles to be electric, and we also assumed that all vehicles of the same type will have the same energy consumption on average. We did not include the impact of different driving routes and things like that. We also assume that the battery is sufficiently charged in the beginning of the day, and the target is to reach the same level of state of charge by the end of the simulation. So the vehicles try to recharge all the energy they have used during the day. Then we tested different scenarios with different charging powers and different pricing. And the scenarios we tested are shown here. We assumed some basic battery capacity parameters for all types of vehicles that we analyzed. And then you can also see the power levels for slow charging. This would mainly be charging at home, or in the case of, for instance, buses, charging at the depot. And then public charging could partly be also fast charging. So public chargers for passenger cars up to 100 kilowatts, and for buses at end bus stops, for instance, 300 kilowatts, and same for delivery trucks and long haul trucks also. Of course, these are figures that will most probably change in the future. Trucks, for instance, will have megawatt charging, but these are the first assumptions in our simulations. Then we also had scenarios with mixed charging. So we made scenarios where you only are allowed to use the slow charging level, or only can rely on fast charging. And then we had also simulations where you can use both. And then on top of that, we tested different pricing schemes. So the first and most simple one was constant price, the same price for charging, regardless of what type of charger you use. And then we had a varying price, which means that the price depends on the time of the day. One example you can see on the figure here. The red curve shows the actual charging cost, and then the purple one shows the price you would get back if you sell energy back to the grid. So this is for the last case with varying price and vehicle to grid option. Of course, the balance market, it's more complicated than this, but we made some simple assumptions that you could get some money back for offering energy to the grid. And also what is important here is actually the change, the variation of the price throughout the day, not the absolute level, what the price actually is, because in our simulations, we require that all vehicles will recharge at some point during the day. So this price curve, it's mostly for directing the charge to the cheaper hours. So to get the first results, here are the results of a case with 100 passenger cars, and they are now using the slow charging only and with a constant price. So they are charging whenever they are parked and they need, and there's no kind of optimization active within the day. And as seen, the power level, it's not constant, but it does not change very much. And the highest peak for this case is 210 kilowatts. for all these 100 vehicles. There is a spike seen at 4 a.m. This is a little bit unnatural. It's because we started the simulation at 4 a.m. That's the time when most vehicles are not in use, so it's the best time to start it. But the simulation it's shown from 0 to 24 hours, so one day. So there's a discontinuity at 4 a.m. because of that. So what happens if we then introduce this varying price with this kind of price curve? You can now see the power demand for this case on the dashed line, and as seen, the situation changes quite drastically. We have a very high power peak during the night time, and much less charging in the middle of the day. And this actually shows the flexibility that can be introduced by electric vehicles, because in both cases the vehicles fulfill the same driving duties. They just adjust the time of charging to different times of the day. And this can be used to balance then the overall consumption of the grid, because as we know, the lowest consumption is typically during the night time, and it's reflected by this price curve that it's very low price during the night, and then in this example a very high price, or relatively it's 9 times higher price in the evening than in the night time. So all vehicles will then avoid charging during that time. Then if we continue to the vehicle to grid scenario, we get the dashed dot curve, and then we can see that the maximum power increases even more. It goes up to 1 megawatt, and the charging remains high during the whole night, so the whole cheap time. And what actually happens here is that some vehicles, they charge more energy than they need for the driving themselves, and instead they sell it back to the grid during the expensive hours. So they have a battery capacity that is more than they need for their daily driving. But we had also other scenarios with fast charging only. They are represented by the orange curves, and mixed charging having both of the options available. I won't go through all these curves in detail, but as you can see, when relying on fast charging, it will be mostly during the daytime, because when being parked at the night, it's typically at home at that time, and most people would not invest in 100 kilowatts charging at their home. So relying on public charging means that we will have a lot of charging daytime. And also based on the assumptions we made and the pricing curves, we get very different power peaks, ranging from 210 kilowatts to almost or to 1,800 kilowatts. So in all cases, the vehicles drive the same routes, they have the same driving behavior, but the charging behavior varies very, very much. This is the results of only having 100 passenger cars, but this is not very realistic. Of course, we have already much more vehicles on the roads. And what will happen then when we scale this up to other to a higher level of electrification, and also including the other vehicle types, then we get something like this. So here you can see a figure including all vehicle types that we analyzed. And this figure, you can to understand it, you can think of it as a clock. So on the outer circle, we have the time of the day going from 0 to 23. So it's a 24-hour clock. And then the colors represent the charging power. The distance from the midpoint represents the charging power level. So we can see that in this case, having just this constant price charging, the most charging happens during the evening, and also quite a lot of charging during the day. So most vehicles, they will just start charging whenever they arrive back home, for instance, and they will recharge the energy that they have used during the day. This is not very beneficial in case the overall energy usage of the whole electricity grid coincides with this charging. But if we here apply this varying price to try to force or motivate the vehicles to charge when the grid load in general is lower, then we, for the same case, get something like this. Now, in this case, the scale has changed, and the maximum power peak, it's much higher. It's around 4 times higher than in the previous picture. But we have concentrated almost all charging to the night hours, and only a little less, mainly the heavy duty vehicles, buses that cannot really wait and cannot survive a whole day on night charging. They will charge still during the day. But a lot of the passenger cars, they actually will not need charging during the day. Of course, some will need, but most of them can survive on the night charging. So as a conclusion, what we have done is that we simulated different scenarios, including heavy duty vehicles, to see what could be the impact and the power required from the grid for these vehicles. And what we can see is that the maximum power peaks, they very much depend on the charging price. And here we are assuming that all users will try to minimize the charging cost based on this kind of price. In reality, this is not how most charging works at the moment, at least not public charging. They tend not to have this kind of spot price in use. Whereas on the other hand, people charging at home, then it depends on their own electricity contract and what kind of contract they have. And during the last year, the spot price, it has been becoming more popular. So for these kind of customers, there is interest to pay attention to the actual price and try to optimize the cost, minimize the costs for charging. But for most people, still, I would say this is not the case. So we cannot claim that the future will look like this. Of course, public charging prices, it's at least out of my control. It's up to the service providers to decide how they will price their services. But what we can say is that there is a lot of flexibility available. So there could be potential to actually minimize the impact on the grid by EVs. And then as a last point, we could do a lot of things to improve the simulations we have done by adding, for instance, more variability to energy consumption, having different pricing schemes and things like that included. But these are some of the results that we were able to produce now within the SPARCS project. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention